Welcome to Marketing Masters, the podcast where we explore the art and science of modern marketing and unpack the lessons from the people shaping the industry today. Today, I'm joined by Frith Wilson-Hughes, the Content Marketing Manager at Southern Cross Health Society. Before joining Southern Cross, Frith spent 8 years at Spark NZ, which is a New Zealand telecommunications company, where she worked across brand and social and helped shape marketing strategy for one of New Zealand's most recognisable brands. At Southern Cross, Frith has been behind some genuinely boundary-pushing work, including the Feel Good project, which has just launched recently, a campaign that flips the script on how health brands typically show up, putting real members centre stage in a way that is joyful, empowering, and anything but what you would expect from a health insurer. In this episode, we are talking about building trust with audiences, navigating the modern customer journey, and what it really takes to be brave and do great creative work inside a large organisation. Frith, welcome to Marketing Masters. It's been such a long time that I've been trying to get you on, and it's so cool to have you here. Thank you for coming.
You. Yeah.
So, Frith, give us a little bit of a quick intro to you and, what drew you to marketing? Like, what is it that got you into this in the first place? And why do you stay?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's definitely not something that I kind of thought that I would. Yeah, it's definitely not something that I set out to do necessarily. I studied a bit of marketing as part of my comms degree, but I really was passionate about publishing, and really that I kind of think the through line is between publishing and marketing is storytelling. And so that's the thing that I was most passionate about. And I did, like I said, I did a comms degree. I did some postgrad in publishing. I ended up working in various publishers. But the industry in New Zealand is really small. And so I found that I'd kind of reached I don't know, I felt like I'd achieved my goal as far as publishing was concerned, but I was still really passionate about storytelling, and in particular online storytelling. I was really chronically online from the beginning, and really loved online storytelling and content creation. And so being able to leverage that as a career has been really cool. And that's that's it, really, storytelling. It's why I stay.
So you're a good storyteller.
Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily a good storyteller, but I like to try and connect the stories that each kind of business and brand has to find an audience, and really kind of make something meaningful. That's the idea, really.
And so you spent like quite a decent amount of time, 8 years at Spark, huge brand, which is quite a long time in marketing terms. What were some of the biggest lessons you learnt while you were there? There must have been quite a few.
Yeah, I feel like Spark was foundational for me, and it's the kind of business that changes so much. So it actually didn't feel like that long. I did kind of step away to have kids as well in the mix there. But yeah, I learned so much, how to work with agency partners, and how to get the best out of kind of agency partnerships, and getting the best out of people kind of within that dynamic. I learned about making a business case, and kind of reporting on ROI that sort of translates the results that you're achieving into, metrics that matter to stakeholders.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, for me, the agency thing is really key, and still is. Building a really good relationship with your agency is so critical to being able to actually produce work that you're both proud of, on the agency and the client side. And that's about getting to know.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you do that? What is the secret?
Yeah, I think it's about getting to know each other, and kind of putting a level of trust in each other, and really acknowledging that you're both on the same side, and that you're trying to achieve the same thing. I think there are different teams and people that I've kind of heard of that have a relatively adversarial relationship with their agency, and I don't find that actually gets the best work out of anyone. I am really fortunate to work with some amazing creative partners, and have over the years worked with some really amazing creative minds on the agency side, and I really appreciate that. I've had some tough conversations because, we're trying to achieve, certain goals for a business, and they're trying to achieve certain kind of creative goals. And when you meet in the middle on something, or when you find that there are synergies in the way that you're working, then that's where you produce stuff that's really cool.
Do you go and bond together when you first start working with a new
I think so.
team, or
I don't really have a filter. And I think, I'm not sure, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest, to not have too much of a filter. But it does, to be vulnerable with other people, it allows them to be vulnerable with you, and then you end up building a relationship where there's trust. And so I'm not going to BS my agency partners. If I don't like something, they'll know I don't like something. If I do, they'll know I do. And it really helps. Because then they'll start to know what to kind of present you, and they'll go, oh, yeah, you should like that. What, that probably isn't going to fly, So, and I actually think that that's so helpful. And that kind of a relationship. It builds over time, and if there's mutual trust, then you end up producing some cool work.
trust is like that one of those themes that hits in so many places, like the trust that you build with your partners, like the trust that you built when you were in your role at Spark, with the community that you were working to build
Mm.
when you were working in the social team.
Mm.
And I suppose that building trust is what most brands want to do,
Mm.
and growing brands. And so, have you got any lessons that you learn about how you do that from not necessarily the agency partnership side, but for a brand itself?
Building trust on behalf of a brand is really tricky. It's a hard one to kind of get right, because there are so many different voices in the mix. Um, and really, there's trust between people, and there's trust between groups of people. Um, and you're only really as good as your word, and consistency is really key. And so I think, as a brand, when you're showing up in various touch points with your consumers, it's about being consistent across all of those touch points, and not just saying that you're doing one thing in one channel. Your marketing team might have a great idea, um, and might kind of sound one way, but then when you're interacting with the brand, like on the phone, or you might go into a store, for example, you need to have that consistent experience. Otherwise, that's going to erode trust.
But in the world of, say, in social, how does that show up in the day to
Yeah.
day on in a team, and how customers experience the social feed, and the interactions they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think at Spark, there's a good deal of customer service that comes out of social. And so I'd say that those interactions need to be consistent. Um, And I think social's a really cynical place as well. And so um, you have to have the answer, I think, to, when you're going to get challenged. You can't kind of shy away from, if you're being challenged, or if you're having a conversation, two-way conversation, you need to be up for it. So you don't put something out on a two-way channel and expect to, not have to respond. That said,
So do you
though,
think?
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I was going to say, do you think, in those conversations, especially around Spark, like some of those conversations might be quite pointy, or a bit a bit not great to be on the feed? Is
Mm.
it that you should try and get those kind of more not great conversations off the feed, and more into a DM situation? Or do you feel like there is some stuff that you should allow to happen in that two-way forum so other people can see it? Where's that line?
Yeah, I think if it's constructive, I think that there's a lot of unconstructive conversation. I mean, I'd say nowadays, social's become a really passive channel, right? There's a lot of kind of, um, I guess users just want to kind of scroll and watch the videos and move on, or whatever. There's not so much interaction. There used to be a lot more interaction, and I think back in those days, you had to be a lot more kind of careful about what you let onto the feed, and the conversations that you kind of fueled. Um, and whether or not they were constructive. And so I'd say, yeah, back then it was a balancing act of what's going to be truthful and transparent and honest, and the kinds of conversations that aren't constructive, or potentially are conversations that need to be had in more direct channels. I don't know. We certainly didn't always get it right, but it's a lot less of an issue these days, as people are less likely to interact on a lot of content.
Mm.
Even the brands with really high engagement have seen a massive drop off with the kind of advent of the algorithm, and the way that people are just finding social to be just a much more kind of passive feed for consuming content rather than a two-way. There are still pockets of it, and there's still platforms where there's heaps of back and forth, but certainly back and forth with brands has dropped off in a big way.
Yeah, I've seen there's been this sort of trend of Facebook communities growing in some
Mm,
brands, because I think the platforms have locked down the organic
mm,
reach so much that, like,
mhm,
a brand, I don't know if you know Fate, the label, it's an Australian brand, but she's
mm,
got a private community that she set up for the brand, and it's a Facebook group, and you apply to be a member.
mm.
And in the
Yeah,
community, there's this really dynamic,
yeah,
cool, supportive environment, and people are sharing their photos of their clothes. And she doesn't tend, I don't think, to use influencers as much, as she actually goes in and asks her community to be the influencers, which I think is kind
mm,
of cool. And apparently, like a lot of fashion brands are kind of going that way, where they're trying to create a
yeah,
community,
yeah.
but it's in a more, what's the word, walled area. So
Yeah, it's kind of in
you
a
apply,
more moderated space, right? And it's
yeah,
only for that, it's not as public.
no.
Yeah, at Spark, we did one of those for, small business owners, and, that worked really well for a time. It does require, if the brand owns it, it does require quite a lot of resource to kind of, not just to kind of keep it going, but and have those conversations with your customers and the members of the group, but also to kind of keep everything on track. And so, yeah, it's quite a commitment to run one of those, and it's best when it's community kind of run, and people really find value in it and pick up the conversations, and it sort of manages itself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's almost like the brand takes a little bit of a step back, and the
Yeah.
community kind of becomes this bustling thing. Yeah,
Mm.
that's what which I think is interesting, because I agree that social has, like, the platforms are want to make money, so they've locked down a lot of the organic reach. So it's pay to play, and so, like
Mm.
you say, it's like you have a mixed media campaign, and social is one of those channels.
Yeah.
Um, But
Yeah.
I think how you, rather than, I call it, having matching luggage over everything, like, you look to create creative that's right for
Mm.
each channel, and so that it
Yeah.
comes to life.
Yeah, I've
And
been trying not to think of. I've been really fortunate, even in the time that I was at Spark. I ran the social team, but I also was able to create content for channels that were outside of social. And more, um, I'm really keen to think of audience first, and then message, and then which channel should that message go in, and whether it's multiple channels, whether it's one specific channel, social, not social. But you got to start with who you're talking to, and then what are you saying, and then how do we connect the two?
like
Yeah.
that. So, speaking of channels and their jobs, there's a debate, which I think is, some people are like, it's a pathetic debate. Why are we even debating this? And Mark Ritson will be like, it's bothism. But, like, there's
Mhm.
this debate around brand versus performance marketing.
Mm.
And when you're building a marketing strategy, how do you think the balance should sit between those two, between consideration, awareness, brand love, consideration, conversion? Like, how does that ecosystem work for you in your
Yeah,
mind?
yeah. Um, I think it's fairly well established that 60/40 kind of Binet and Fields kind of, I guess that as a rule of thumb. makes a lot of sense for a lot of businesses and is broadly kind of the way that it should be thought of. But it really does vary.
For
So
those who don't know, just like do a little run through on the banana peel.
yeah, so in order to, I guess, build brand and attract kind of future demand, you should invest 60% in brand and longer term kind of brand building activity and 40% in shorter term kind of performance conversion activity. And that's the kind of theory, and that works really well, I'd say, as a general rule. But I think it's massively dependent on your industry, and the product and the category, and the complexity of the product that you're offering. The two, I guess, main industries that I've worked for have been service brands, and health insurance in particular is a very complex product. And so we spend a lot of time in that consideration space, consideration, education, understanding what products are and how they benefit you, and all of that sort of stuff, because the buy journey is really long, as opposed to kind of an FMCG brand or something like that might be a little bit simpler to kind of understand. I still think 60/40 is right, even for those kinds of brands, but certainly for a service brand, you really need to think about future demand, because it's a tricky product, and we want to make sure that people understand what it is that we're offering.
So does that mean, in a way, that I'm reading between the lines, that you were saying for something like health insurance or a more complex decision process, that might be that you're managing a decision that could take months? So
Yeah,
you're looking to put more into the brand maybe than you would if you were a
yeah.
retail brand? Yeah.
Yeah, looking at the balance, and I guess kind of testing and making sure that you've kind of got the balance right. But yeah, we do want to make sure that we're investing in brand, and then making sure that we've got the convert layer activity in front of the right people at the right time.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally, I put a post up the other day on social about some people are saying that the algorithms on social are so smart now that you can just have one campaign, chuck all the creatives for the different stages into the one campaign, and just tell it that you want sales and it will do it. And I was like, well, I run
Maybe.
ads. And I was like, no, it doesn't work like that. Because I think the platforms will go after converting the people that are in market now, which is normally a much
Mm,
smaller proportion of who would
mm,
be in market in the future. And so it's, yeah, and Meta wants to deliver conversion. So if you're wanting to get conversions, that's what it's going to focus on doing. So it's going to take the people who are more primed, get those, and
yeah,
then that market will get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you're going to tap out and there'll be, diminishing returns because you haven't invested in the future demand. So there's that,
yeah,
I think there's even that same strategy, even
yeah.
in social, or for brands that can only afford to do social, you should still have that same ethos in a way, where you
Mm,
have a brand awareness love layer,
mm,
and then the more conversion layer, which are both sort of running separately but
mm.
supporting each other, like you say, like with alignment to the brand.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
And do you think the customer journey is messy,
Yeah, it's funny. I think,
non-linear?
yeah,
Like that?
I think that there are many channels, and there's a lot of there's a lot of diagrams online of the funnel, right? There's lots of different funnels, but ultimately they are awareness, consideration, conversion, and then that sort of loyalty and that sort of side of things, the retention side of things. Ultimately, it's the same broad funnel, but with a whole bunch of different channels, just a whole bunch of different places that people can go to kind of consume this broadly awareness, consideration, conversion. So I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to the marketing funnel. It's a good point of reference. But I don't think, I do think there are so many channels, and the landscape is so fragmented now, right? So that's where that complexity comes in, and where it starts to feel non-linear. I think it would only be linear if there was one channel per kind of part of the funnel, right? Which is just not the case. So yeah, I'd say it is non-linear, but broadly speaking, we're still in that kind of awareness, consideration, conversion. That's
And so, how do
change.
you build a content strategy to work in that multi-channel
Yeah. Um,
environment?
I think it's starting with the insights and starting with understanding where your audiences are and where they're coming from, and not trying to be all things to all people. Just because there are myriad channels doesn't mean that you have to be in every single one. And if your audience isn't there, particularly if you've got a limited budget, which everyone does, right? And limited resource, you don't need to be everywhere if that's not where your audience is. So making sure that you are starting with insights and are starting with the data and following those people, the people who are most likely to be in market for your product or service. And then whether or not you can further invest in that channel or whether there's sort of a channel that's in parallel or an emerging channel, being kind of nimble enough to turn something on over there, but not trying to just spread yourself super thin, I think.
So when you are working on campaigns, is there always a mix of media? I'm assuming the stuff that you do, yeah. So you have like a kind
Yeah.
of...
Yeah, I mean it's tough because you'll create something that's intended for one sort of channel or a group of channels, and it sort of doesn't go outside of that. But if you're starting with your audience and then your messaging and then selecting your channels, it does tend to be more efficient to create at least the same messaging or at least the same kind of overarching campaign idea across different channels. That's what we've seen the most effectiveness out of anyway.
So going from effectiveness into light channels again, do you think that, I mean, it's like, sometimes there's those, like traditional media is dead, all of the spend's moving into digital. What do you think that headline means to you? Or like, is it total rubbish, or like, where does your head sit in all of this?
It's a sensationalist headline, right? It's like, millennials are killing X, Y, and Z, or AI is coming for your jobs. It's just a broad generalization. I don't think if there are still audiences and they're your audiences using traditional media, then don't throw out traditional media. That's where the people are, but be led by where the people are. So, if it makes sense to, put your messaging in a traditional space, then by all means, that should be a layer of your strategy, but not to the exclusion of, if your agency comes back with data that, actually people are using this channel, well, test it, see if they actually are, see what your results look like, and then build from there. Yeah.
So traditional media is not going anywhere yet.
I don't think so. I mean,
No.
it really depends. Like if you're talking to an audience that spends most of their lives online, then that's where you would put your budget. But if you're talking to a broad audience, people still watching TV, people still, listening to the radio. It might not be you, but, trust the data. There's lots of data out there that tells you that, that might be a channel that you should consider investing in. And if you get the results, and then, yeah, I'd say so.
So you've been working on you've released recently a campaign that is called the Feel Good Project, and before we blocked this in your diary, I saw that ad and I actually really was like, oh my God, that's a really good ad. It's really cool. I really like it. I thought it was such a cool ad, and I didn't realize that it was connected to you. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. So yeah, tell us about that, because it's showing. Tell us, for those who haven't seen the creative, maybe just do a bit of a explanation of what the creative is, because if I do it, I'll stuff it up. And then what was the brief? What was the problem you were trying to solve? Give us a bit of background.
Cool. So the Feel Good Project brief was to increase our brand relevance and show the Southern Cross difference, or what makes Southern Cross difference. But also we were trying to shift what's kind of been a bit of an industry trend, that insurance and healthcare comms can often feel quite heavy.
And
Yeah,
boring.
quite dark as well.
Yeah.
And so we were wanting to kind of flip that narrative, and to position Southern Cross as something that's optimistic and human, and joyful, potentially even joyful. And the idea was to celebrate the feeling of well-being rather than the journey from illness to well-being as one that's kind of a well-trodden path. And so to celebrate the feeling of well-being and what the whole point is of getting well and, feeling well. We wanted to do that through the lens of our real members. Um, we have an amazing member base, and a lot of the time hearing from members it's truly one of my favorite parts of my job, because getting these members on board, we heard their stories, and some of those stories were amazing. Like, there were people that we couldn't include in the ad. We ended up using 6 real members from all around the country, various different health journeys, various different kind of ages and stages in life. But we spoke to so many more. And, for whatever reason, these 6 were the ones we used. But some of the stories were truly incredible. And we have a real strength in that, and people who've had good experience with Southern Cross, and have had real kind of come out of real tough situations into some, into kind of their new life. And that's been amazing, those stories that we've told. So, yeah, that's what the Feel Good Project is. And that's why we wanted to do it.
And so did they learn choreography or like, how did all of that
Yeah,
happen?
yeah. We had directors and choreographers and creatives, and we got them to, we had them in for I think it was a week or 2 weeks to learn the choreography and to get comfortable and to get confident. And we captured that stuff, and then we sort of brought them out onto set and got them in their amazing costumes and makeup, and they performed. And we had obviously lots and lots of support from talent and actual, real professional dancers. So they didn't feel that all eyes were on them, and we didn't put them in into positions where they felt uncomfortable, or we didn't want to we want to push them or make them feel silly, but we got them doing things that definitely were outside of their comfort zone. And yeah, I think, yeah, it's fair to say they all had a pretty great time. Some of the
How
feedback
did
was really cool.
how did the idea even get like, like you go, I could just imagine when they're presenting the idea and then you think of like healthcare is quite, and Southern Cross is quite a kind of has been in the past a very, traditional, safe, kind of, dependable brand. And this is quite feels a bit more, I suppose, upbeat and positive, and that has a really nice, I don't know if this is the right word, but it has a really nice vibe about it. Like it actually is an uplifting ad, and I suppose it's
Mm,
sort of like you say, it spins that narrative on its head about yes, healthcare can be hard and horrible, and you go through stuff, but could, if you get the right help, then you have
mm,
a much more positive experience afterwards, and
mm,
that's a really lovely
mm.
thing because you can go on and live an amazing life. But I imagine trying to get that across the line, was that quite challenging?
It's funny. I think that the strategic shift really did. Um, that there's an amazing team at Southern Cross, and we work really closely with our agency partners. And that strategic shift was something that we saw and that we actually really wanted. So moving away from talking about, what healthcare fixes to sort of why it matters, and what that feeling of well-being actually looks like after a person has received that healthcare. So having the real members express and show that transformation was it was beautiful, and was something that we actually did get a lot of real encouraging kind of buy-in from around the business. So everybody internally loves it, and it's so cool to see the support that it's had from our teams.
Has it had good? Because I genuinely didn't know that it was yours, and so when I did see it and then we connected the dots, I was like, "Wow, that's so cool." But, like, is it getting a good response as well
It's
in the
Yeah.
initial reads and kind of feedback that you're getting?
Yep. Yep. So we've had really good results from a creative perspective. Our research agency has come back to us and kind of given us some really, a good early indication of how it's being perceived in sort of a market. Because it's such a vibe shift, we do kind of acknowledge that it's going to take some time, and it's brand. It's going to be a market for a longer period of time than a shorter term campaign, and sort of we appreciate that, because it's such a change from where we've been, a shift from where we've been. It's going to take some time for people to start to kind of acknowledge, and their attribution is going to build over time. So yeah, it's good.
So is this a real shift in Southern Cross as a brand? And I mean, I feel like if I turn up at the offices, there might be, yoga classes and
Dances.
dancing classes, and is the brand
Yeah.
gonna like go through the entire
Yeah.
business?
It is. We're drawing a bit of a line in the sand, really. We are sort of it is where we want to go, right? From this sort of traditional insurer to more of a kind of a proactive health partner. That is the direction of travel for Southern Cross, and so this is a real kind of, it's a signal really of kind of the direction that we're traveling.
And what a cool thing for you to be involved in, like in your
So
career.
lucky, right?
Yeah.
It's been so amazing because it's been such a long time coming. It's been a long time in the works, and so many people have touched it. Like it's been, been part of the kind of the team's objectives for a long time. And it's certainly, I feel like I've said I sort of felt like I grabbed the baton in like a relay race and just ran a small distance because there's been people before me and, people alongside. There's been it's been a true team effort across the business.
And so, like, from a content point of view, how is it showing up in all the different places? So I've seen the TV ad.
Yeah. So
I'm assuming it's across video as well, but then,
yeah.
yeah, everything else.
Yeah, so we've started with a sort of a screens or a video approach. So it's in various kind of AV channels, but there's also because there's 6 members that star in the main Hero TBC. There's 6 individual stories that they currently live on our website in digital and social channels, and so that's where the member gets to talk a little bit more about the journey that they've been on from a health perspective, and also how it feels to be part of a project like this. And so those testimonials are a real kind of the real backbone, I'd say, and the real kind of truth and authenticity to the story. Those are going to be rolling out. We've got we've got social, we've got PR, it's a full kind of song and dance. But yeah, we started with the hero video to kind of signal that shift, and then forthcoming campaigns might have that same vibe. So that's the idea.
And so your role at Southern Cross, are you in charge of showing and kind of owning how content shows up across all of those channels and how that
Yeah.
story plays?
Yeah, I mean, we've got
Plays.
a team. So because this campaign is at a master brand level, that means that our partners are at healthcare, we're involved. So we've got healthcare and health insurance, and they're 2 very separate businesses run very separately. But we wanted to leverage the strength of that master brand, and so there's a team on the healthcare side. They're looking after their stuff. I work in the health insurance side, and so I look after content that comes out of health insurance alongside this content. So there's content that's direct to member, which is our kind of retention and sort of our always on content to members. And then there's sort of broader acquisition content as well. Yeah, so I sort of feel like I join the dots between a lot of different,
Yeah.
teams and objectives.
Sounds like a pretty full-on role.
It's really
Like, lots
fun.
to do. Busy.
It's really cool.
Busy.
Yeah.
And so with creators and influencer marketing, and I think it's really interesting because you're talking about how you've embraced customers almost becoming
Mm.
Southern Cross's influences. But
Mm.
to kind of go off piste a bit, it's like the rise of creators has been huge over the last few years, and we've just had CreatorCon again a couple of weeks ago. What's your view and your experience on how brands should be building those partnerships into their
Yeah.
marketing strategy, and or is it too late? Is it kind of something that happened and or do you think it's like all of the channels depending on the audience kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's too late. I almost think that in New Zealand, our sort of creator economy is still really in its infancy, to be honest. I think in other markets, there are sort of more and more experienced creators, and in New Zealand, we're sort of only in the beginning of that journey. But I've had some really good experiences with creators, and I've had some absolute shockers. And so and so I think for me, it's about what is the partnership, and is it a strategic partnership or is it a tactical one? And I think brands would most likely, and certainly in my experience, have had more success with a more strategic and ongoing partnership than a sort of a one episode of a podcast or one-off sponsored post or whatever. It sort of just feels like the success that we've seen with longer term or series type partnerships where you've kind of got more time to build the relationship, where the creator understands what your business is all about and what you're trying to achieve and your objectives. And also when your audience has time to really understand the relationship between your brand's values and the creator's values and the creator's messaging, and really make that connection. I think that's where you see the gold in that kind of longer term alignment.
But I think that's really interesting that you say that, because that's not, I suppose that's like you say, long-term investment, like building partnerships, finding
Mm.
the right people, sticking with them.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, it's brand building, right? And it
yeah,
does take.
and building the stories. It's all about the
Yeah.
storytelling and the ongoing, what are you trying to say and how does it all
Mm.
connect? Oh my
Mm.
God, yeah, interesting. Now, a topic that you might, I mean, AI. AI.
AI,
AI.
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be
What
a
is
podcast on marketing if we didn't talk about AI, right?
where are you at with it? Like, I mean, it's gonna come and take all our jobs. So,
Well, that's it. I think if I think about it too much, it makes me feel a bit sick, to be honest. But it's not to say that I'm avoiding it. I'm not avoiding it, and we are using it, and I'm actually loving using it on the process side of things to streamline kind of workflow and to work on kind of consistency, certainly consistency of written work. I'm finding it super useful. Um,
can you give
and
us a bit more context about that? Because some people are
oh
still trying to figure
yeah,
out, like, they're just having, like, asking ChatGPT a question, and that's kind of the level
yeah,
of
well, that's
AI
good
that,
too. That's a
yeah.
good. I mean, for me, one of the things that is kind of within my realm of responsibility is making sure that we have a consistent and on-brand tone of voice in our written work. And so I did a bit of work before kind of AI. Before the tools were more widely available, I did some work on tone of voice to establish some principles for our brand's tone of voice. And then I've since kind of tested building a GPT, kind of a custom GPT to align and streamline our tone of voice to flag anything that feels off tone and also to flag anything that might be a compliance or uh, something that we need to double check with legal. That kind of tool is amazing, right? Like it's so cool because it takes away that sense of, does this sound right? Like I just don't know. And like different interpretations of voice principles, for example, that all kind of gets taken out, becomes a lot less subjective, which is a real amazing thing for consistency. And so that's one application that I found really useful. And yeah, I'm looking forward to using it more for personalization, for kind of reformatting creative, and really just kind of taking the menial stuff out of my everyday and the team
Yeah.
every day. That side of things doesn't give me the heaps. It's the other stuff that freaks me out a bit.
What stuff? The
I'd say, well, it's the generative stuff, that kind of, because you used to be able to go, "Oh, that guy's got 6 fingers, so that's AI generated."
yeah,
But
yeah.
you can't do that anymore, right? And so I think that that's sort of got, it has massive broader implications for kind of the state of truth and democracy and what's going on at a kind of government and platform level, when it comes to these kind of big tech companies. And that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. But yeah,
Mm,
besides that, I think in the marketing space, what gives me pause with regard to AI in the marketing space is when people are generating content that's not adding to a conversation or not actually saying anything new. It's just generic. They're not like fine tuning it or reviewing it. It's just coming across as bland filler. What's even the point? And so that's the stuff that I'm like, do we really need that? But yeah, besides that, there's amazing applications for AI in marketing. Yeah.
do you think we're like, if you were going to predict, like, in say 2 years' time, do you think it's gonna, like, I don't know if you've seen all the TikToks about like Claw, Open Claw, and like the idea
Um,
that everything is automated and it's just you speak to your phone and then it goes off and does it, and you can come in the next morning and it's all done and dusted, and like this idea that it's all so easy. I mean, part of me, I had a bit of an epiphany the other night, and I was like, actually, maybe it's not that we need to be worried, because I think it lets you get like a lot of the admin stuff done faster, and
Mhm.
it can streamline stuff to actually give you more time to be more strategic and more creative
Yeah.
and do
Yeah,
cooler
that's
stuff.
that's the and it's when you're as optimistic as you can be about this stuff, that's really the win, right, for
Mm.
marketers who are using AI. I don't wanna make any predictions. Come on, who knows?
Who
No
knows?
way. But yeah, I think if we can continue to kind of use it for our own best purposes and keep a sense of kind of, I don't know, what am I saying? Keep a sense
Integrity
of
or
kind of, yeah, and like ethics as well,
mm.
going, I don't know, does this need to look like this, or do we need to use it in this way? I don't know. Um, but yeah, for what we're using it at the moment, it's really powerful and really cool.
There was this. I'm going off piste here, but I was at the doctor's the other day, like about a month ago. I get like a regular script for my asthma, and he was like, "Oh, meet." I can't remember what his name was, but like meet, let's say Ethel, and I was like, "Sorry, where's Ethel?" And I'm looking around his room, and Ethel is this little white microphone on his desk, and a lot of the doctors and the hospitals are moving to this recording system that records all of the conversations. So
Yeah.
then it writes up the notes from their appointment, and
Mm.
even suggests if what it thinks maybe the gaps that the doctor may have missed, if in
Oh,
terms of
wow.
picking up on something. And
Mm.
I was like, oh my god, that's crazy, because I was sitting there and he wasn't writing or taking any notes, and he's like, oh, it's fine, it's all being done for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like and yet I know a woman who works for the hospital typing up
Mm.
the doctor's notes. And so
Mm.
she's slightly worried because, of course, if they all start moving to this new system, then
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And
changes.
I think if you've got quite a specialist role like that, then yeah, that
Mm,
does kind of potentially mean that you
shift.
need to pivot. But
But it just starts
um,
popping up in all these different places. You're like, wow, wow. Like I didn't expect it at the doctor's, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think
That's
healthcare
crazy.
is an area that, I think that's really amazing. Anything that can save doctors' time is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I
When
was
it's
quite impressed.
That's
I
great.
was
I
like,
mean, yeah.
I
Yeah,
was like,
there's
this.
just so many applications in so many different industries, right? And when we're talking about marketing, it's, the opportunities are really endless. And I
Uh,
think they'll vary by by whatever your category is as well, and whatever it is that you're trying to sell, and what your brand's identity is, and what your brand's comfortable doing. I've seen Skinny out there with, what's her name? That AI
Oh,
lady.
yeah.
They're out there
What do you
doing it.
think about what do you like
Oh,
it? What do you think about that?
it's Skinny, right? They can try things. They can
Yeah.
do things like that. If it were a different brand, potentially there might be a
Mm.
little bit more kind of hesitation to do stuff like that. But yeah,
They've got the permission to because they say they want to save money for people, and
that's
so
right.
they keep the prices low by doing things in way pack and save. Same thing, like
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
same vibe,
No.
same vibe. Those
Yeah.
brands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a large organization, what do you think is the biggest barrier to creativity and building a
Mm,
creative? Because I think
mm.
you guys have you've I reckon you've aced it with this campaign, like taking Southern Cross to this. Like I'm impressed. I'm seriously
It,
impressed. So
yeah,
how do you keep it going? Like, and how
it
do you?
is a big
Yeah.
shift. And I think it does come down to confidence. And like what we were just saying with Skinny, they've got permission to do that. Well, you only have permission if you do a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more and establish yourself as the kind of brand that would do that. But in order to get to that place, you have to make a shift, right? And so this is a big shift for Southern Cross. But we're really confident about it. And I think some big brands, not necessarily at a leadership level, but more from an organizational point of view, don't have that level of confidence because we're concerned about how things will land. And that concern holds us back from trying and potentially failing in some ways, maybe. But
Mm.
yeah, I'm really proud to work for a brand and have been very lucky to work for brands that are always up for things. And yeah, that's a real strength, I think.
Yeah, so amazing for you. Like, gives you, yeah, and huge kudos to Southern Cross. Like, seriously impressed. Like, you kind of, old Southern Cross, you would think blue and white,
Yeah.
a picture of an old person or something on a cover, like very, and now it's just such a big shift. It's amazing. So, would
Awesome.
you say that's your biggest, being part of that campaign is probably your biggest win so far since being at Southern Cross? Or, like, have you got some other amazing things that you've been doing?
I mean, I've been so lucky to be a part of this project, for sure, the Feel Good project, but I don't know that any wins I could claim them as my own necessarily because we've got such a good team and everything that we do is super collaborative. There's nothing really that goes out the door without the team kind of putting our heads together on it really, and making sure that we're comfortable that it's going out and it's a team effort. For me, it's definitely the vibe shift that's been
Mm.
a real delight and continues to be something that I'm really proud of, and want to keep pushing. We're making heaps of ground in sort of understanding what people want to hear from us rather than crafting our messaging around what we want people to hear. Um, Actually sort of stopping and going, all right, well, here's what people expect from us. Do we want to lean into that or do we want to challenge that? It's sort of cut across the way that we've structured our social channels. So that was a big job for me when I came in to kind of get social into a place where we're comfortable that we're, saying the right things in the right channels, and learning from messaging that hasn't landed. We've been, bold and gone out with stuff that we potentially wouldn't have done in the past. And so that's been really cool. And yeah, really just trying to take a different tone.
So do you think there was testing and learning done in social maybe to then apply to the Above the Line campaign?
I'd say so. I don't know that we wouldn't probably have called it like a conscious test and learn. Like we didn't put Feel Good into social first. Um, but we do experiment with different tones in social, and we've established various kind of content series in social that have taken slightly different tones and learned from those. Yeah, we did a podcast partnership series that went really well for kind of that younger audience. We have done some of our like employment value proposition comms, some talking to our audiences about who we are as a team has gone really well, and then some education content, sort of breaking down various kind of preventative procedures. We've got a series called What to Expect, which talks to people about, what to expect for your first mammogram or what to expect for your colonoscopy. So talking about things that are really common, not, we're not talking about stuff that is, a great big scary procedure. It's like an everyday procedure, and making sure people feel comfortable and kind of equipped to go into something like that. So
Which is
yeah, that
awesome
kind of
because,
stuff.
colonoscopies are like so critical and important, and people get afraid of them. But I can tell
Yeah,
you, I've had to have
yeah,
one to check something, and
yeah.
it was all good. But
We want to
yeah,
make
wasn't
people
that
feel really,
bad.
yeah, and also thinking about how these kinds of procedures are really great preventative procedures, and so when you're on top of your health before things start to kind of go south, that's amazing, and that's what we want for New Zealand really as a brand.
Yeah, totally agree. So, what is one thing you think marketers are sleeping on right now?
I love this question. I don't know. And it's going to sound like such a non answer, but I think marketers in New Zealand are really bloody clever. Like, I think we actually know what we're doing and we're onto it, and we're creative and innovative and really keen to try new things when they arise. So I don't think as a general rule, as a bunch of people, I don't think we're asleep at the wheel in any way.
Maybe people are sleeping on
Maybe.
AI.
I don't think that anyone's asleep. I think we're just waiting for it to roll out. We
More
say,
thinking about like, um, you know how like there's AGO and SEO, and how do you make sure that your brand's showing up when someone is
yeah,
asked? I was watching just a video on social the other day about a real estate agent, and he was like it was a big deal, and he'd lost a 50 million, well, nearly lost a $50 million deal because both parties went one guy went, am I selling this for the right price to his AI agent, and the other guy went, am I paying the right amount of money, and both GPTs told them, of course, completely the wrong. Well, I
yeah.
mean, like it told them something that literally meant the deal was going to fall through.
Mm,
And he managed to pull it off, but he was like, wow, okay, this is a new problem. How do we,
mm.
when someone
That's
goes,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, but where is
So
this information coming from, right? And a generative engine optimization is definitely something that we should be, aware is, becoming more and more important, and making sure that we're tagging and that our on-site content is optimized and all of those things. I think, as we're seeing behaviors shift from traditional search to generative search, we do need to kind of shift our behavior. Maybe people are sleeping on that. Maybe people are all over it. But
I
yeah,
don't
I
think they
think
are. Yeah.
it,
I think it's
yeah,
coming. Yeah.
it's coming, and
Yeah.
I think that we'll be able to adapt as we go.
Mm.
Yeah.
And finally, if you could give one piece of advice to marketers trying to build brands that last and that are successful and that also enrich their careers, what would it be?
Hmm. I think if we're trying to build brands, we need to not get sick of our own work too quickly. I think it happens all the time, right? You get marketers who live and breathe their campaigns day in and day out for, I don't know, 12 months, and then they go, oh.
Need to
And I
change it.
think, yeah, I think if you've figured out what you want to be known for, stay the course. You might sort of need to tweak or optimize or refresh your creative, but brand work that works is a long-term game. And some of the work that I admire the most has been in market for forever. I love, and it's funny, even when I worked at Spark, I loved 2 Degrees platform, Fighting for Fair, because it's just
Yes.
the perfect insight for a challenger brand. It taps into that kind of New Zealand underdog mentality. And it's just been something that's worked for them for so long, and they have not been tempted to move away from it. And I think that's really served them.
Hmm.
So I think if you find if you hit on the right insight, don't get sick of it too quickly, because people haven't seen it as much as you've seen it, and they're not sick of it yet. So yeah, that would be my main message, I guess.
That is a frickin' mic drop moment right there.
Cool.
I'm so glad that you could come on, and I'm really
Yes,
grateful that you could join me.
we finally
And
made
no
it
doubt
happen.
you're going to be making huge waves going forwards anyway, so we might be meeting again.
Yeah,
You never
let's hope.
know.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
Cool.